Ukraine braces for Russian assault in eastern Donbas region. Leave Ukraine, April 11. Ukraine said on Monday it expects Russia to begin an offensive soon in the eastern Donbas region as Moscow shifts its focus to seizing territory there after its invasion force was driven from the gates of Kyiv this month. Russia's main target in Donbas is the port of Mariupol, where thousands are believed to have died under a near 7-week siege. Russia is amassing thousands of troops in the area for a new assault, Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky said. The first European Union leader to meet Russian President Vladimir Putin in person since the war began, Austrian Chancellor Kurt Nehammer said, following talks in Moscow, that the offensive was evidently being prepared on a massive scale. Western sanctions on Moscow will intensify so long as the invasion persists, Nehammer said, telling Putin, once will not be enough. 10 times will not be enough. It might have to be done 100 times, he told reporters. After withdrawing forces from northern Ukraine, including suburbs of the capital Kyiv, laid to waste under its occupation, Russia has turned its sights towards Donbas. It is demanding Ukraine cede control of territory there to separatist fighters. Apparently, one of Russia's major goals in what it calls a special military operation against its neighbor. Capturing Mariupol, the main eastern port, would allow Moscow to link troops advancing from the east with those from Russian-annexed Crimea in the south and shift their focus to a new attempt to encircle the main Ukrainian force in the east. The United States, which warns Moscow is trying to reinforce and resupply troops in Donbas, has sought to pressure Putin to withdraw his forces by banning Russian oil and gas and encouraging allies to follow suit. But world powers, including China and India, have refrained from sanctioning Russia. Lured by steep oil discounts, India has purchased more Russian crude since the start of the February 24 invasion than it did for the whole of last year, data compiled by Reuters shows. In a video call, U.S. President Joe Biden told India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi very clearly that it is not in their interest to increase reliance on Russian energy, White House spokesperson Jan Psaki said. During a brief portion of the call open to reporters, Modi said he had suggested in recent talks with Russia that Putin and Zelensky hold direct negotiations. Thousands have fled the Donbas region. In his latest plea for international support, Zelensky told South Korea's parliament that tens of thousands had already been killed in Mariupol, a figure that has not been confirmed independently. Russia has repeatedly denied attacking civilians. The numbers of people leaving the city had fallen because Russian forces had slowed pre-departure checks, said Pietro Andriuchenko, an aide to the mayor of Mariupol. Around 10,000 people were awaiting screening by Russian forces, he said. Russia does not allow military personnel to leave with civilian evacuees. There was no comment from Moscow, which has previously blamed Ukraine for blocking evacuations. Ukrainian fears intensified last week after 57 people were killed in a Russian missile strike on a train station in Donbas, where thousands were trying to flee the expected advance, Ukrainian officials said. Moscow denied blame for the missile strike, as well as Ukrainian and Western accusations that Russian forces committed war crimes north of Kyiv. The United Nations is hearing accounts of rape and violence by both Russian and Ukrainian forces, UN officials said. Katerina Cherempaka, president of La Strada, Ukraine, said the rights group's emergency hotlines had received calls accusing Russian soldiers of 9 cases of rape, including involving 12 women and girls. "This is just the tip of the iceberg," she told the UN Security Council via video. "We know and see, and we want you to hear our voices. That violence and rape is used now as a weapon of war by Russian invaders in Ukraine." Russia's deputy UN ambassador denied the allegations and accused Ukraine and allies of a clear intention to present Russian soldiers as sadists and rapists. Ukraine's UN mission did not immediately respond to a request for comment on allegations against Ukrainian forces. Russia's foreign minister, Sergei Lavrov, said Moscow would not pause the fighting for any new round of peace talks, which last convened on April 1. A decision was made during the next rounds of talks. There would be no pause in military action so long as a final agreement is not reached, Lavrov said. Britain's defense ministry said Russian shelling continued in Donbass, but Ukrainian forces had beaten back several assaults and destroyed Russian tanks, vehicles, and artillery equipment, it added. The governor of another eastern region, Luhansk, told Ukrainian television that shelling was increasing day by day and urged all civilians to evacuate. Those that warned to leave have already left, while now many are left in bomb shelters, who are perhaps frightened to come out of the shelters or scared to lose their possessions, Governor Charlie Pecot said. Bitcoin falls 5.3% to $39,881. April 11. Bitcoin dropped 5.3% to $39,881.02 on Monday, down $2,231.58 from its previous close. Bitcoin, the world's biggest and best-known cryptocurrency, is down 17.3% from the year's high of $48,284 on March 28. Ether, the coin linked to the Ethereum blockchain network, dipped 6.58% to $2,991.51 on Monday, losing $210.86 from its previous close. Flighty Musk exposes Twitter's flaky governance. New York, April 11. Twitter's history is as rich in plot twists as a soap opera, but the short-lived episode of Elon Musk joining and then deciding not to join the social media firm's board has once again exposed its flaky governance. The world's richest man on Saturday bailed on becoming a director just days after agreeing to do so. The board's haste in inviting him in reflects poorly on the $37 billion company. Musk announced he had bought a 9% stake in Twitter last Monday morning and then agreed to join the board later that day. As part of the deal, he committed not to increase his stake beyond 14.9%. The 3-paragraph agreement reflects the speed with which it was drawn up. A similar 2020 agreement between Twitter and activist investor Elliott Management ran to 14 pages. How the Tesla chief executive now features in Twitter's future is a mystery. He could try to take over the company, remain the largest shareholder and persistent critic, or lose the interest and walk away. A new filing with the Securities and Exchange Commission says he may express his views on the company, management, and service through social media. That would have been harder to do if he was bound by the responsibilities of being a director. The board's poor decision making is clearer, however. Musk has had his share of run-ins with regulators. In 2018, he submitted to an agreement with the SEC that required Tesla lawyers to approve his tweets about the company after he tweeted that he was considering taking the electric car maker private at $420 a share. Musk's recent declaration about his Twitter stake was filed late. His loose cannon social media activity should have been another red flag. Before being invited onto the board, Musk had publicly questioned whether Twitter is dedicated to free speech and wondered whether he should start an alternative service. After he was appointed, he publicly questioned whether Twitter was dying because prominent accounts post rarely, and asked whether Twitter's headquarters should be turned into a homeless shelter. Perhaps Twitter's board hoped to neuter Musk by bringing him onto the board, and Musk rebelled. However, he has built his career, wealth, and persona around flouting rules. Making him a director should have required more careful deliberation. Twitter's rush showed how badly it is governed. Walgreens flooded Florida with addictive opioids, lawyer tells jury. April 11. Walgreens Boots Alliance Incorporated supplied billions of opioid pills to drug addicts and criminals, contributing to an addiction epidemic in Florida, a lawyer for the state said on Monday in a civil trial against the pharmacy chain. Walgreens filled 1 in 4 opioid prescriptions in Florida between 1999 and 2020 and failed to investigate red flags that could have prevented drugs from being diverted for illegal use, the state lawyer's Jim Webster said as jurors heard opening statements in the trial held in Newport Richey. Walgreens was the last line of defense in preventing improper distribution of opioids, Webster said. It was the entity that actually put the opioids in the hands of people addicted to opioids and the hands of criminals. Walgreens, which has denied the allegations, is the final remaining defendant in the trial taking place before Judge Kimberly Sharp Bird in Pasco County Circuit Court. Florida previously reached $878 million in settlements with CVS Health Corp., Teva Pharmaceutical Industrials Limited, AbbVie's Incorporated, and Allergan Unit, and Endo International. Stephen Derringer, Walgreens' attorney, said in his opening statement that the pharmacy chain filled prescriptions from doctors and did not ignore red flags that allowed opioids to flood Florida. There are so many pills because doctors have written so many prescriptions for pain medicine, Derringer said. Florida has spent more than $14 billion to address the opioid crisis in the state, and opioid overdoses have caused nearly 40,000 deaths from 1999 to 2020, Webster told jurors. Walgreens deserves a huge chunk of the blame for overdose deaths and the state's increased spending, Webster said. Derringer countered that others should be blamed for the state's opioid epidemic, including drug manufacturers who lied to pharmacies about addiction risk, U.S. Food and Drug Administration officials who approved the sale of opioids for chronic pain, and doctors who wrote unnecessary prescriptions. Florida has collected more than $3 billion in opioid litigation against drug makers, distributors, and pharmacies, according to Attorney General Ashley Moody. Most will be spent on efforts to mitigate the opioid crisis in the state. In March, Walgreens rival CVS Health Corp agreed to pay Florida $484 million. Drug makers Teva will pay $194.8 million. Allergan will pay $134.2 million. And Endo will pay $65 million. Walgreens previously argued it was immune from being sued based on a mere $3,000 settlement it reached with Florida in 2012. Following an investigation into its record-keeping policies and efforts to prevent the diversion of opioid drugs. Byrd ruled in March that the 2012 settlement addressed only a single record-keeping violation and did not protect Walgreens from other claims. The company has appealed her ruling. While a large portion of the more than 500,000 U.S. deaths from overdoses in the past 2 decades were caused by the powerful opioid, fentanyl, and other illicit drugs, overuse of prescription pain medicines put countless Americans on the path to addiction. Sudanese protesters mark 3rd anniversary of Bashir's ouster with fresh protests. Khartoum, April 11. Crowds of Sudanese protesters gathered in parts of the capital and other Sudanese cities on Monday, the 3rd anniversary of Omar al-Bashir's ouster, to protest the prospect of renewed military rule. Bashir was ousted after 3 decades in power by a group of his top generals, who later entered into a power-sharing government with the civilian groups that had led months of protests in 2019. That arrangement ended on October 25th, when the same military leaders, led by General Abdel Fattah el-Burhan, staged a coup which has plunged the country into economic and political turmoil. Bashir's downfall did not mean a final victory for the revolution, because Burhan is a continuation of his regime, said 38-year-old protester Ahmed Ibrahim. We will bring down the military peacefully, and democracy is Sudan's future, he told Reuters at a Khartoum protest. Protesters blocked main roads, burning tires, banging drums, and chanting revolutionary poems. Protests against the coup have taken place despite a security crackdown that has claimed the lives of 94 people and injured thousands, as well as climbing temperatures and Ramadan fasts. Khartoum protesters broke their day-long fasts in the street, as they did in major protests last week, and numbers swelled after sunset. Protests were also seen in other major cities, including Bahri, Omdurman, Port Sudan, and Mondani and El Obeid. The military says the coup was a necessary corrective measure. Reuters reported last week that a deal was under the consideration between the military and some political groups to bypass opposition parties and set up a new government. Britain widens access to Pfizer's Covid antiviral drug through trial. London, April 12. Britain will expand access to Pfizer's oral antiviral COVID-19 treatment to thousands more people by adding it to a trial to assess how best to use the drug in its highly vaccinated population, the health ministry said on Tuesday. Paxlovid, a combination of Pfizer's new pill with an older antiviral ritonavir, was made available to thousands of people with compromised immune systems in Britain in February. Now, Paxlovid is being added to the panoramic national study in England, which is making antivirals available to a wide number of patients while collecting data on how the drugs should best be used in a vaccinated adult population. Paxlovid was shown to reduce the relative risk of death or hospitalization by nearly 90% in clinical trials of high-risk individuals given the treatment for 5 days. Currently, it is advised to be taken during the early stages of COVID, though last month was added to another trial for hospitalized patients. Britain has reported 170,000 deaths from COVID-19, and Prime Minister Boris Johnson has cited antivirals as part of his plan to learn to live with the virus, saying they can cut deaths among those who do not benefit as much from vaccine protection, such as the immunosuppressed. As we learn to live with COVID, the UK continues to lead the way in using cutting-edge treatments, which have already saved the lives of many of the country's most vulnerable patients, Health Minister Sajid Javid said in a statement. The panoramic study is open to adults over age 50 or those aged between 18 and 49 who have underlying health conditions that may put them at higher risk for severe COVID. Paxlovid is the second antiviral to be added to the trial after molnupiravir, a pill made by Merck and Company, and Ridgeback Biotherapeutics that did not perform as well in its pivotal clinical trial. The health ministry said that 20,000 people had joined the panoramic study to generate data on molnupiravir, with a further 17,500 people to be enrolled to access Paxlovid. Biden cracks down on ghost guns with new rule to tackle gun violence. Washington, April 11. President Joe Biden unveiled a new rule to rein in so-called ghost guns and ban the manufacturing of the untraceable firearms on Monday as the administration faces growing pressure to crack down on gun deaths and violent crime in the United States. Ghost guns are privately made firearms that are not marked with a serial number and are difficult for law enforcement to trace when used to commit a crime. The Department of Justice's final rule has been making its way through the federal regulation process for nearly a year and is likely to draw opposition and litigation from gun advocates in the coming weeks. These guns are weapons of choice for many criminals, Biden said during an event in the White House Rose Garden. We're going to do everything we can to deprive them of that choice. The rule would make it illegal for businesses to manufacture such kits without a serial number and for a licensed gun dealer to sell them without a background check, Biden said. The rule is part of a series of measures announced by Biden and the Justice Department in April last year to tackle growing gun violence in the United States and curb mass shootings. In 2021, there were about 20,000 suspected ghost guns reported to the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms and Explosives, and as having been recovered by law enforcement in criminal investigations, a tenfold increase from 2016, according to statistics shared by the White House. The Justice Department rule bans unserialized buy, build, shoot kits that individuals can buy online or at a store without a background check and can readily assemble into a working firearm in as little as 30 minutes with equipment they have at home. It also turns some ghost guns already in circulation into serialized firearms. Gun deaths increased in 2021 over 2020, according to the nonprofit Gun Violence Archive. In 2021, there were 20,726 gun deaths in the United States, not counting suicides by gun, the group reported. This included 693 mass shootings, defined by 4 or more people being shot, and claimed 702 lives and injured more than 2,800 people, the group reported. Biden also nominated Steve Dettelbach, a former U.S. attorney from Ohio, to run ATF.